Sunday, and there's Monday, there's Tuesday, and there's Wednesday, there's Thursday, and there's Friday, and then there's Saturday. Days of the week. Days of the week. Days of the week. Welcome to Greed for the Death and Demise of All Americans. I'm here with Brandon Adams, the Alderman of Jacksonville, and we're going to talk a little bit about the media and Medicare for All right now. There's an action out there to force the vote for Medicare for All. So right now, a lot of people know that our media is corrupted. Donald Trump will say, he'll call it fake news. And it's more like corporate censored news. I call it corporate censored because it's corporate sponsored. So I know that's hard for people to wrap their mind around, that they can't trust the news. But I think right now we should be questioning everything and getting a more rounded perspective, like independent media, Free Speech TV, freespeechtv.org, live streams, and what are some social media sites?
Well, so I would make the distinction between not trusting mainstream media, because that's basically the distinction, is when you have moneyed interests like the billionaires that own the company taking money from the fossil fuel industry and the pharmaceutical industry and the healthcare corporations to not air reports that look badly on their donors, then that's what's not rocking the boat to be able to inform the American public, where you have almost every independent media station not being funded or commercialized by the moneyed interests that are controlling our government and our media at the same time. So they have the ability to report more freely on the issues that really the mainstream media doesn't dive into for fear of their donors pulling funding.
I mean, just to give audience that they're just wrapped up in their normal everyday lives, they're not really paying attention. What are some good social media sites? I mean, we've got Jimmy Dore, Kyle Kulinski. If you YouTube Jimmy Dore, that's D-O-R-E, not D-O-O-R. Kyle Kulinski, pretty much how it sounds.
Yeah, a lot of people go to
The Gray Zone.
A lot of people go to TYT, but they're getting commercialized. The Gray Zone's really good. Professor Richard Wolf's an economist that has Democracy at Work. That's a Monday show. Katie Halper does a podcast. Brianna Joy Gray has the Bad Faith podcast. There's a lot of independent media out there that's really getting its start right now. The Rational National from Canada pretty much strictly reports on American news.
I couldn't think of
you got Status Quo with Jordan Sheridan. And that's a really good investigative journalist. I have friends in Chicago with Hardlands Media and Kevin Gostelow with Shadowproof. I mean, they're if you want to look for them, they're out there, and they do excellent reporting. You know, some of them have received Pulitzer prizes and awards for.
So this is a more rounded view of what's going on. I think right now we should question everything, but I watched a documentary many years ago, and it said that the propaganda put out there is actually tested by psychologists, and they come up with propaganda mainly to affect us and how we think, how we feel, and most importantly, how we vote. And that wouldn't need to be done if we were just reporting the news with a straight face, no comment added, and just the truth. But that's not what the news is anymore, and that's not what's going on. So, and Brandon just said the same sources that sponsor our media also lobby our government and really finance our elections, and that money's in a lot of other things like think tanks that put out the flyers we see during the election. So we have a pretty corrupted system, and we're going to talk about, now that we've explained why you might not be hearing the truth about Medicare for all. Why we're here today is because there's an action to force the vote on Medicare for all, which is really important because this is time sensitive. We have just so many days where people can call in and let the representative know what they want, and really flood the phone lines. That's what we're wanting out of this. So right now we're in the middle of a pandemic, and it's never been more important to have Medicare for all. Dylan Radigan on the Jimmy Dore show said that 1/3 of all small businesses are going to go under. So, you know, this is like absolving the middle class.
Well, capitalism's ultimate goal is to concentrate wealth in fewer and fewer hands. So you saw since the reverse of the New Deal policies back in the 70s and then the 80s started the neoliberal policies, that concentration has just intensified, and to where it was changing the corporate tax code from paying 33% to now paying like less, around 10%, where that pay had to be made up by the middle class. So they pit the middle class against the poor people to take care of, and now they're not even happy with the middle class taking care of them. They're just going to take those people out and some of the millionaires that own small businesses. I mean, it's the rich eating the rich at this point because there's nobody left.
Yeah, and I mean, I've been affected by the pandemic. I haven't had many teaching assignments as a substitute teacher. My Airbnb is basically non-existent. I have rental property where tenants aren't paying the rent. I mean, 1 out of 5 are paying their entire rent for the month. So I'm losing money this year, or even, you know, breaking even at best. And so I can imagine, you know, restaurants and I don't know, like gymnasium, or, you know, like the Fit Club, and just all these different businesses, and a lot of small businesses are more affected. So anyway, we're going to talk about, you know, that's why we need Medicare for all at this moment in time. But overall, Medicare for all saves the average family $4,000, average family of $4,000 a year, when you consider the high cost of insurance premiums. So I think we should talk about, you know, why we have the Congress not wanting to pass this, and the role the insurance companies play in.
Well, the healthcare corporations have had their analysts and think tanks involved with this since the early 90s, when the idea was first put forth. John Conyers came out with HB 676, the Medicare for All, in 2003. And the healthcare corporations have done their analytics enough to know that the best way to kill Medicare for All is to not vote on it. They've had 17 years to be able to vote on a Medicare for All plan, and it hasn't even gone to the floor yet for a vote. So when you think about, oh, you can't put it on the floor, it'll kill the bill, it'll lose popularity, we don't have enough votes. Well, I mean, how do you know? You've never voted on it. And it is during a pandemic, when you have 88% support under Dems, and 72% of Fox News viewers just said that they want a government-run healthcare system. I mean, you have the popularity from the entire voting bloc, the majority of them by far. But when you look at, you know, even if 50% of Republicans want Medicare for all, less than 50% of elected Democrats in the House want Medicare for all, or co-signed on to Medicare for all. So you're really talking about the elected Democrats are to the right in spectrum of Republican voters on the healthcare issue.
Yeah, and you know, the big insurance companies, Aetna and Cigna and Blue Cross and Blue Shield, they are the ones we're talking about that sponsor our media, that lobby our government. And you know, Dick Durbin took, you know, like around $40,000 from Blue Cross and Blue Shield. And so we have a corrupted system that keeps us in this for-profit healthcare system. And the media's line of questioning itself makes people question Medicare for all. Like, how are you going to pay for it? We've all heard that. How are you going to pay for it? So, do you want to say the real facts on the cost of Medicare for all?
Every other country in the world that has a single payer system is saving money on average. I think we pay over, I think it's almost $12,000 per person, and most of the other countries can do it for between $5,000 and $8,000. So we'd be saving half to a quarter of the money that we're spending right now. So how can we pay for something that costs less? I mean, that's a
Yeah.
the idiocracy in
Yeah.
saying that we can't pay for something when it costs less than what our current system does and covers everybody is the problem that we're facing right now. I mean, it's solely purchased by the healthcare corporations.
So the answer to that should always be, it costs less for our country. How do we pay for war? How do we pay for subsidizing industry? You know, like the space program, and that should be the answer to that every time. How do we pay for it? It costs less. How do we pay for this, this, and this? Because the line of questioning, I think if it were answered in that way every time, I think they'd stop asking that question maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so the other thing, I think it's important to know that every other civilized country has Medicare for all, just like every country in Europe got much more of a stimulus check than Americans. And I don't know.
Japan's funding 100% of wages. I think it's 80% in Germany, 78% UK or something. All of them are over 70%. And France, all these countries are. Canada has given people $2,000 a week. I mean, we've waited this entire pandemic almost a year now, and we've only gotten $1,200 plus $600 is $1,800. So less than 1 month of Canadian assistance equals an entire year of American assistance.
Yeah. So they do things much more to help people in that way and with their healthcare system. So, and when supposedly we're the richest country in the world,
We are.
why do you think that's going on? Like,
Because the rich are the ones that are keeping everyone from healthcare. That's the whole point. I mean, when this movement came about, it was an opportunity to be able to expose the difference in the majority of Democrats above the Republicans in the House, which is minimal at this point. I think I've heard from 5 to a dozen or maybe 15. So if 5, different split between Democrats and Republicans on the House, 6 progressives withhold their vote for Nancy, and she doesn't get the speaker unless she puts Medicare for all on the floor for a vote. And that's all it takes is 6 progressive members. There's 97 members of the Progressive Caucus, and none will withhold their vote from the speaker to get Medicare for all floor vote. I mean, when we just saw 126 Republicans ask the Supreme Court to overturn an election, and 70 times they've tried to overturn the Affordable Care Act, that the populist movement and the Tea Party is basically capitalized on each of these issues, which culminated in increasing their base support and ultimately, I would say, electing Trump in 2016. overthrew Eric Cantor, the Speaker of the House. They kicked out John Boehner, who couldn't deal with them. They just totally disrupted the system because there was enough of them that voted together against the Republican Party to change the ideology of that party. And that's the same thing that we're talking about right here. Nancy Pelosi has less popular support than Donald Trump. I mean, wouldn't it be wise to be the person shown going against a person that has such a high unfavorability rating in American politics? I mean, even if Medicare for All went to the floor and Nancy did become Speaker for another 2 years and it did fail, at least the people that are during a deadly pandemic, millions of them are losing their jobs, and already 87 million under and uninsured people without health care, and we see them fighting for that. I mean, it loses, great. We still see them fighting. They fought for the right thing. Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and AOC aren't going to lose their seat because they voted against Nancy Pelosi for Medicare for All. I mean, that's the whole point of this discussion, is that, you know, we need to see people out there fighting for us, and we elected these people to Congress to do just that, and we haven't seen any of them fight for the people. I mean, this is an issue that's so popular that it's almost a no-brainer, but we haven't, it's just been crickets out of the Progressive Party.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is, and this is another thing that the mainstream media puts out there that you can consider propaganda, and that is that somehow this is socialism, this is Marxism, or communism. But really, what progressives are wanting to model this country after countries like Denmark, which has
This
the
is
highest...
plain and simple humanitarianism.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all there is to it. If you don't think that Americans should have health care during a pandemic, you're extreme. Not anything else. It's not any kind of economic or governmental system that everybody covered is some kind of conspiracy. The right thing to do is to give everybody health care during a pandemic. And if you can sit here and say that people deserve to get COVID tests and that they can have their hospital bills forgiven from, you know, just contracting COVID, then why is it that COVID is a bill that the government's going to take care of, but cancer and diabetes and all these other things? Oh, well, you just have to pay for that one, you know. So that's the misconception. Once you start going down that road of, well, this is what our government did for us, then why aren't you doing this? And then so, you know, that's the one thing that they're preventing from happening. And like I said, if it fails on the floor in 2020 or 2021, it's going to build movement, and a issue with, you know, 70-80% popular support isn't going to just die and people are going to be like, oh, well, I guess we tried. When you look at the suffrage movement in 1918, it failed on the floor, and then the president endorsed it and it became the 19th Amendment in 1919, a year later.
I don't see how it hurts anything.
So I would say that the woman's right to vote and health care for everybody are both of high significance and should be considered a similar situation in American history in politics.
Yeah, but you know, Denmark has been rated by its citizens, they're the happiest and with the highest quality of life in the world. So why wouldn't we model the United States after what works? A model that works. It has nothing to do with socialism, Marxism, or communism. That's propaganda, as we spoke of earlier. So, so I'm asking people to do things like what we're doing. Make a video, put it on social media, put it on a public access channel, call in to the radio, call in to different programs, and, you know, voice, you know, your opinion. Like you called in to Tom Hartman. Do you want to talk about that when you asked Mark Pocan a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to know if he'd put Medicare for All on the floor, since now the Congressional Progressive Caucus, the chairwoman is Pramila Jayapal, who is the author of 1384 Medicare for All in the House. And if you have the chair of the Progressive Caucus not even wanting to put her own bill on the floor for a vote, I mean, that just goes to show the Representative Pocan's answer was, we just don't have enough votes. But like I said with suffrage, that's not really the issue. It's trying to prevent the conversation of, this is a popular issue, and once it goes to the floor, it's going to get passed, if not this year during the pandemic, next year like the suffrage movement, or 5 years from now like a normal bill that has popular support would. It's preventing the bill from going to the floor for even having that discussion that they're trying to propagandize the people into believing that they shouldn't have nice things. I mean, you know, when we just watched this CARES bailout was the largest upward transfer of wealth in human history from the middle class to the wealthy, and you know, there was just crumbs for the poor, a $1,200 check, and that's so all those representatives could say, you know, that these trillions of dollars that went to these billionaires, that doesn't matter, you got a $1,200 check. Well, no, that was the whole point of the $1,200 check, is so we wouldn't complain about the trillions of dollars that just went to the billionaires.
Exactly.
And they just did the same thing with the CARES Act, or this new the funding that they just passed a couple days ago. That, you know, it's $900 billion when it was $1.8 trillion under Trump, and the Democrats' starting bargain was $3 trillion. So, you know, our legislators are not getting the best deal they can when they went from 3 to 2 to 1.8 to 9, and now $900 billion is the compromise. I mean, they should have started off with $50,000 for everybody, and then we would have compromised to $2,000 instead of a $600 check.
Yeah, something. It's ridiculous. Like, you know, and then they're talking about, oh, and you can get your bills paid off and save for retirement, and that's kind of goofy.
Yeah.
Like, that's so much money or something.
Yeah, they cut and pasted
that's not even
a CNBC ad to just discuss the fact that they don't want to talk about that it's absolutely nothing. They gave so much. I mean, they gave $30 million to for democracy in Venezuela. I mean, you know, I mean, there's so much pork that's added to that bill that is just unbelievable, and none of it would just a $600. They had the representatives make $180,000 a year. They had 36 weeks to think about giving us a $600 check during a pandemic.
Yeah.
Can I just laugh at that?
Yeah. So we're asking for you to call Progressives, AOC of course, 202-225-3965, Pramila Jayapal, 202-225-3106, Corey Bush, 314-492-8386. Let's see, Mark Pocan, 202-225-2906. And there's a long list, really, and I'll try and put this in a text, but you can also go to Jimmy Dore, D-O-R-E. He's got the list of progressives.
I think it's forcethevote.org now
Okay.
Is there that you can sign the petition.
You can sign, but can you also get these numbers?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. And call your representative, because we're going to have to get everyone on board, because what you have over them is to not vote for them, of course. So even if your rep is a Republican like mine is, I called him, and you can find out who your representative is at the switchboard at 202-224-3121. And
yes, it has a list of all the people. There's 15 of them. There's been 22,840 people signed already, and that is at forcethevote.org.
okay, good. And the other thing is, and I was wondering what you think about this, if I'm not sure how wide these public access channels are, but I'm from Springfield. We're here in central Illinois, and I know that Chicago has, it's called the Chicago Access Corporation. If you're a progressive, you can do your own show on that venue, And that would be something to consider. And I don't know if they're in other big cities like New York, like Los Angeles, but I think we have to, I mean, there's over 300 million people in the United States. We have to reach people that aren't in like the social media progressive family, I guess you'd call us, you know? Like we're kind of preaching to the choir.
Well, yeah,
so to speak.
what the problem is the mainstream media isn't going to talk about this, and it's the
Right.
majority of the support of people. So how do you
Even
get the
though,
message
even
out?
despite the mainstream media.
So how do you get the
Yeah.
message out?
Yeah.
That's the question. And everybody that wants health care for everybody else in America is doing everything they can right now to try to bring awareness to our representatives and calling our representatives. If you have a representative that's on the list that lives in the district, make sure you pressure them to force the vote. I mean, social media helps, videos on public access help, internet videos, everything helps, the petition. I mean, we've got to find a way to just get our Congress to talk about how much support Medicare for All has from the public, and why aren't they talking about it in Congress?
Right. And so, so this Chicago Access Corporation would be a big one. If someone could go on there, I'd like to see Jimmy Dore and maybe, you know, another progressive, Dylan Radigan or somebody go on this show. They've got a strong voice.
Yeah, I mean, Hardlands Media broadcasts every day from Chicago at 5 o'clock, and he could always come on their show. He has before. I mean, that's definitely
he's
a
gone
possibility.
on to the Chicago Access.
Hardlands Media, that has a 5 o'clock show every day on YouTube.
Yeah, but and that how does that air? Does that air
YouTube
on
and Rockfin.
TV or so? It's basically social media too.
Mhm. Well, YouTube and Rockfin.
Would you want to go on
And
this
Patreon.
Chicago Access? Would
I
you
mean,
be
that-
willing to?
It's anything, the whole thing is we have till January 3rd. And
Wow.
I'd just like to say, I'm in politics because of my healthcare issue that
Yeah.
I was a welder 7 years ago, and you know, between welding jobs, I got bit by a mosquito at my friend's farm fishing and ended up in a 2-month coma from West Nile virus. I woke with a $321,000 bill, and that's when I knew the system was broken. So, you know, for the past 7 years, I've been fighting for Medicare for All because I know that's what's right, and from experience. And so, you know, the people that maybe aren't on board with this, maybe sharing examples like that is something that they can understand why it's so urgent for me to think that we have progressives that are fighting for us in healthcare like the popular support has in Congress, and that would withhold their vote from somebody who has less popular support than Donald Trump does to, you know, to become speaker, you know, and then in order for that unpopular person to get the speakership, they would have to agree to a floor vote for Medicare for All, among other things, hopefully, but at least that.
Yeah. And our government.
I mean, you're literally talking about every day people are coming out of the hospital from being in there from coronavirus with, you know, $10,000, $100,000, $1 million hospital bills because they, you know, got breathed on by somebody that didn't wear a mask, and none of us have health care, and well, none of us have health care that we're not going to go bankrupt from. I think that's one of the more plausible arguments from all the other countries, and that's 34 OECD countries, and 33 of them have a universal health care system. OECD, the Organization of Economically Developed Countries, and you know, that's the whole point about it, is that they have enough money to be able to provide it. But that's not only the rich countries. There's plenty of countries that aren't in the OECD that have a universal single payer system too. And so, you know, when we're 37th on the list of healthcare country, the best healthcare in the world, you know, out of 34 of the rich countries, that means there's 3 poor countries that are doing better than us. So when you look at it like that, it's like, you know, we're none of these other countries, like out of 15 countries, none of them have people that go bankrupt from medical debt. There was 0 of them where, you know, we had tens of thousands of people here last year. That's one of the number one reasons to go bankrupt is medical debt. And you know, this system that we have that incentivizes profit, and something like life or death is incentivized as profit is just abhorrent. We should take the incentive out of profit for healthcare, period, and just let a single payer system happen.